Have you ever asked yourself, what if Garfield were voiced by Chris Pratt and he also had daddy issues? No? Well, me neither, but you know, the movie was still fun anyway, so that means it's time for us to rank the Garfield movie's characters from good to evil. Like usual, we'll be starting with the most pure-hearted characters and working our way down. Grab some frozen lasagna with a promotional picture of Garfield on it because we're going to dive right into it with the good. The gold medal of good was a little tough to decide, but we decided it should go to Garfield's adoptive owner, John Arbuckle. While John unfortunately doesn't have nearly as much screen time as you might expect him to from the trailers, the time we do get with him paints him as a truly pure-hearted man. We first see him eating alone in a fancy restaurant, clearly feeling lonely, yet even then he's genuinely happy to see other families enjoying themselves, showing that he's a compassionate guy. Rather than envying others' lives, John is genuinely glad to see them happy. But most importantly to the movie, he's also an amazing pet owner. He invites baby Garfield to eat with him and doesn't hesitate to buy a family-sized lasagna for him, even after Garfield rapidly ate his own food. He can't bring himself to not take Garfield home with him, and the two become best friends with each other from then on. And the same generous care he lavishes on Garfield, from home-cooked meals to credit card access, is extended to Odie as well, and then later to Vic, who from John's perspective just showed up one day and decided not to leave. That's not to mention his dedication to finding Garfield and Odie when they've gone missing, staying on hold with the computer for days to get any info he can. John is a national treasure and an ideal pet owner who's worthy of our top spot. The silver medal of good goes to one of the most iconic good boys in animation, Odie. Like in the Garfield comics, Odie makes up for his lack of dialogue with his adorable, playful personality and his dedication to help his family and friends however he can. Garfield literally claims that Odie is his unpaid intern, and while there's not really evidence of Garfield bullying Odie like he does in the comics, that's still a questionable assertion, but nonetheless, Odie seemingly doesn't mind it at all. He's always happy to help Garfield with everything from adventures to meal prep and relaxation, constantly putting himself in harm's way for the sake of helping his buddy. In a sense, Odie also acts as Garfield's conscience. Near the end of the movie, when Garfield and Vic go their separate ways, it's Odie whose look of disapproval convinces Garfield to go after him and invite him in. Odie is a hero through and through, to such an extent that he's the only one of the main three Otto automatically concludes is ready for their mission to break into Lactose Farms. The only negative thing we could say about Odie is that he seemed pretty amused watching Garfield and Vic bicker throughout the first act of the movie, but he's still not really losing points for that because, let's be honest, who doesn't love a little drama? Side note, we thought Odie would be a perfect fit for the Darwin medal, but then there was one particular scene where he calculated the exact amount of milk the gang needed to steal in order to pay off Vic's debt.
1,675 quarts of milk, exactly right, Odie.
This is completely unrelated to morality, but I want to make sure the world stays aware that Odie is a mathematical genius, and he's been hiding that from us since the 80s, for which we will give him the Sloth Center medal, if nothing else, but we'll also give him some treats to even it out. Our bronze medalist of good might be surprised, but we have to give it to Garfield's father, Vic. While Garfield and the audience initially thought that Vic had abandoned Garfield as a young kitten, by the halfway point of the movie, the truth comes out that Vic never meant to leave Garfield behind. On the contrary, he was sneaking away to try and get food from a restaurant's trash can. But thanks to this guy, who apparently doesn't know that you can use phones inside too, he had to wait a long time, and by the time he got just enough food for his boy, Garfield was already with his new owner/adoptive dad, John. While Vic was devastated, he decided to keep his distance and watch over Garfield from afar, seeing that Garfield was able to eat plenty and live comfortably with John. Vic is willing to do what it takes to protect and provide for his son, even when it makes him look like the bad guy. In addition to rescuing Garfield and Odie when they're kidnapped by Jinx, he saves them again later in the film by letting Garfield and Odie get captured by the Pound so John would rescue them and they wouldn't get caught up in what he concluded was Jinx conning them.
Oh, Odie, you think he'd see that coming?
He's also remarkably patient with Garfield, despite the undeniable pain he's been through. The only reason he isn't number one, considering all this, is the fact that he did work for an organized crime group, but also, he's a cat, they gotta eat, and even if they have a concept of laws in this universe, we're not gonna count it against the guy to commit a little robbery here and there if it means getting his next meal. Up next, we have a dual entry for the mascots of Lactose Farms, Otto and Ethel. These lovebird bovines, love bovines, if you will, are the mascots of Lactose Farms who were tragically separated because of, we don't really know actually. I don't think they explain it. In any case, these two clearly love each other to the point where Otto is willing to help three complete strangers break into the farm to free her. Their dedication to each other earns them a more respectable than usual Lust Center medal. While they both seem like kind characters, we definitely see more of Otto, who offers his services to help prepare Vic and Garfield for their mission. His cynicism can lead to him being a little cold and callous sometimes, but that doesn't make him any less kind-hearted deep down. It's time to close out the good category, so without further ado, the main man himself, Garfield, is up next. The lasagna-loving cat is as lazy, gluttonous, and self-indulgent as ever. It'll be a miracle if John ever puts a dent in all the debt this cat has undoubtedly built up with all his constant food delivery orders. Garfield's affinity for food earns him the Gluttony Center medal, without a doubt. But like in the comics, behind Garfield's big gut and bigger attitude lies a pretty big heart, too.
We're gonna need the big scale!
The
she need to announce it to the whole office?
Despite treating Odie as an unpaid intern, he's still generally nice to him. We don't see him kick him off tables here like he does in the comics, and the two seem to have a genuinely wholesome friendship. That friendship extends to John, who we see Garfield tuck in after a long day of work, something he tells Odie not to let anyone know he did. In addition to treating John and Odie well, he's willing to forgive Vic once he learns the truth about why he abandoned him. After he and Odie are safely back home, they go back to save him from Jinx and her crew, earning him some serious hero points. Garfield might be lazy and gluttonous, but he's also a genuinely caring guy, and he's more than earned his spot as an absolute icon. Now it's time to move into the more questionable characters. This is the gray area. Kicking off this category is Vic's crew, one of whom is a cat voiced by Snoop Dogg, in case you weren't already convinced you were witnessing peak cinema here. Like Vic, these cats are technically criminals, given their status as jailbreakers, or would they be pound breakers, and their tendency to steal food. Like Vic, however, we're not taking too much away from them for that, since they're stray cats just trying to survive. That said, it would have been nice for them to be more understanding of Vic wanting to be there for his son, rather than writing him off as a flaker for spending so much time prioritizing Garfield. Thankfully, they do show up at the end of the movie for Garfield's birthday party, so it's probably safe to say they've made amends and are still on good terms, despite their now different lifestyles. Next up is Lactose Farms' purveyor of justice in a very specific vacuum, Margie Malone. As the head of security at Lactose Farms, Margie takes her job very seriously. To an extent, this is a good thing. Margie is intelligent enough to use an app to find out exactly what Jinx is saying during her phone call, despite the language and species barrier. She's ultimately willing to make a deal to apprehend the offender, setting Ethel free at last in exchange for a captured Jinx. It might seem on the surface level that Margie is just doing her job, but her short fuse warrants a more middle-of-the-road placement regardless. She takes a little too much pleasure in fighting animals for our comfort. Even in Otto's memory of her dragging him away from Ethel, she looks to be having the time of her life. This makes her not only his nemesis, but his enemy, and that's not to mention how often she shouts at her poor employees. She's not a bad person, but she could definitely benefit from some anger management classes. Speaking of which, a quick mention of Jinx's first henchman, Cooper, is in order. Cooper was the bird who managed to track down Garfield and Odie in order to kidnap them, and thus kicking off Jinx's plan to lure in Vic. He's the least violent of the three henchmen, and he even encourages Jinx to control her temper and remember her anger management therapy. Man, he's not the best guy morally, but he seems like a pretty good friend. I'm sure Jinx will at least be totally appreciative of him, and she just ate him alive. Okay, well, but still, though, credit for caring about his boss and being the only one of her henchmen to really push back against her plan. But to close out the gray area, we have the more memorable of the henchmen, Nolan and Ronald. These unconventional canines might seem like ravenous monsters at first. They are extremely violent when they play, and while the only thing we see them massacre are a couple of display dummies, we can't say with certainty they haven't done that to other people. They do a lot of really horrible things under the command of their boss, Jinx, from kidnapping Garfield and Odie to low-key threatening to kill them if they don't help Vic repay his debt to Jinx. However, during the final battle, these two actually find redemption. When they realize that Garfield and Vic have mended their relationship and have been healed by Jinx's misdeeds, they refuse to kill them, instead turning on Jinx and her evil plan, using Roland's glorious folds as a makeshift paraglider to get the gang away safely. They did a lot of bad things, but in the end, they realized they were being used and chose to befriend decent people and save their lives. And since they show up at the aforementioned birthday party at the end of the movie, it's safe to say that friendship was a good decision. But now, without further ado, it's time to talk about the characters who are worse than a Monday. Okay, maybe not that bad, but the bad to evil are still no picnic to deal with. We only have two truly villainous characters to discuss, and the silver medal of evil goes to the answering machine. Okay, we're sort of joking with this one, but come on, if you've ever been on hold for any reason, you felt every bit of John's pain when he was desperately waiting on the computer to finally tell him an associate was ready to speak. As if being an automated customer service system isn't evil enough, at one point this menace asks John what kind of pets he has, only to immediately remind him that this won't help, but that they're only asking him this so he'll get the false sense of them being engaged with him.
There are 1,346 people ahead of you.
What could be more evil than that? Well, look, come on, you know who's number one. It's gotta be Jinx, Vic's former friend and ally turned vengeful psychopath. Now, upon seeing just how angry Jinx is at Vic, you'd think, okay, she deserves the Rat Sinner medal regardless, but I wonder what horrible things he did to her to deserve this. Well, get this, Jinx was a part of Vic's crew, and when she got caught during a heist, Vic left her behind. At least, that's how she'd tell the story. For an unbiased summary, Vic tried to chase after the car holding her, but couldn't catch up because, you know, it's a car. But apparently that wasn't enough to satisfy Jinx, so she resorted to kidnapping Garfield and Odie with the help of her henchmen so that she could lure Vic in, threatening the trio if they didn't pay her over 1,000 quarts of milk to make up for how long she'd been in the pound. Now, not only is Jinx endangering the lives of Vic and two other people who didn't even have a role in the incident, but it turns out that she just wanted to frame Vic so he would get put in the pound, and when it doesn't go to plan, she just decides to straight up murder him.
It was never about the milk.
Tack on the fact that she verbally abuses her henchmen and even literally eats one of them, and you have one irredeemable feline. Seriously, how does she only get community service?